My name is Helen Bradley. I am 71 years old, and if you ask me, nothing in this world cuts deeper than being humiliated by your own child in front of the very people who raised you. It happened on what was supposed to be a happy day, my birthday. The house was filled with relatives, cousins I hadn't seen in years, neighbors who had known me since my children were small, and even a few church friends from the First Baptist congregation here in Savannah, Georgia. The air smelled of roast chicken, buttered rolls, and peach cobbler. Laughter spilled from the kitchen as the younger ones hurried around with plates, glasses, and bottles of sweet tea. For me, it was supposed to be a celebration of survival, of having made it through decades of hard work of raising children on my own after my husband passed away, of building a home where love and respect could grow. I wore a dress I had stitched with my own hands many years ago, a soft lavender one with pearl buttons. It wasn't fancy, but it carried history, birthdays, weddings, baptisms. Every thread told a story. When I stepped into the dining room carrying a basket of homemade biscuits, the room grew quiet for half a heartbeat. Then my youngest daughter, Vanessa, burst out laughing. "Mom, seriously, that dress? You look like you just stepped out of some dusty thrift store." The words sliced through the air like a sharp knife. The table erupted in awkward chuckles, some forced, some uneasy. A cousin tried to change the subject, but the damage was done. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, my heart pounding against my chest. My hands trembled as I set down the biscuits. I smiled the way mothers do when they're trying to hide the pain. "Well, it's comfortable," I whispered, but my voice caught. Inside, it was as though the earth had cracked open beneath me. I had given my life for this girl, sacrificed vacations, worked double shifts at the diner, gone without new clothes so she could have what she needed. And now in front of everyone, she had reduced me to a joke. It wasn't just the dress. It was the disregard, the public shaming. In our Southern tradition, family dinners aren't just about food. They are about respect, about honoring the elders who came before us. Vanessa knew this, yet she chose to strip that respect away. What no one at that table knew was that I had been carrying a folder in my handbag all evening. Inside was a will I had drafted weeks earlier, after noticing how often my children treated me more like an obligation than a blessing. I had been torn about whether to finalize it, still hoping love could outweigh bitterness. But in that moment, humiliated and heartbroken, I knew what I had to do. Later that night, after the cake had been cut and the guests began drifting home, I called for everyone to gather once more in the living room. My lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, who had quietly joined us as a friend of the family, stood beside me. I opened the folder and pulled out the papers. "I want you all to hear this," I said, my voice steady, though my heart raced. "This is my will, and tonight I'm signing it." Gasps echoed across the room. Vanessa's eyes widened. My eldest son, Daniel, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat and began to read aloud. "I, Helen Bradley, leave my house here in Savannah along with my savings account and personal belongings, not to my children who have forgotten the meaning of respect, but to a scholarship fund in my late husband's name. This fund will provide for students who, unlike my own family, understand the value of gratitude and humility." The room fell silent. My pen scraped across the paper as I signed my name. The sound was louder than the laughter that had humiliated me earlier. Vanessa leapt to her feet, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, please, I didn't mean it." It was just a joke, but there was no undoing the words, just as there was no erasing the ink that now sealed their consequences. As I looked around the room, I didn't feel victorious. I felt something deeper, like a door closing behind me, one I could never open again. And that, dear friends, is where my story begins. Before I go on, let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, standing there with the pen in your hand, would you have done the same, or would you have forgiven on the spot? Comment below and tell me what your heart says. If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me. When you are young, you think the years will stretch on forever. You think you will have endless time to teach your children right from wrong, to build memories that will bind you together long after the house falls quiet. But then one day, you blink and they are grown. They have their own houses, their own children, their own problems, and sometimes their own grievances that you never even knew existed. Looking back, I can still see the days when my house was filled with the laughter of 3 children running barefoot across the hardwood floors. Daniel, my eldest, was the quiet one, always reading on the porch steps. Vanessa, the baby, was bold and restless, forever climbing trees or sneaking cookies from the jar. Between them was Mary, my middle daughter, who often tried to keep peace when the younger one's temper flared. Life wasn't easy after their father died. I was only 43, and suddenly the weight of the whole family fell on my shoulders. I took double shifts at the diner downtown in Savannah, serving plates of fried catfish and collard greens until my feet ached and my back screamed. Some nights I would come home so tired that I fell asleep still wearing my apron. But I never let my children see me give up. Every dollar I earned went into keeping the lights on, keeping food on the table, and making sure they could go to school without feeling less than anyone else. I patched jeans, stretched meals, and took on sewing jobs from neighbors to afford piano lessons for Mary and dance classes for Vanessa. I wanted them to have a childhood that felt whole, even if ours was a family missing a piece. For years I believed they understood. I believed they carried my sacrifices in their hearts the way I carried their smiles in mine. But slowly as they grew older, cracks began to appear. Daniel went off to college, the first Bradley to ever step foot on a university campus. I was proud beyond words, but distance changed him. He became practical sometimes, cold-speaking more of investments and job opportunities than of family dinners. Mary married early, moving 2 states away, calling often at first, then less as her own children filled her world. And Vanessa, sweet, fiery. Vanessa, she was the one who stayed close, but also the one who seemed to resent me the most. She wanted more than I could give. She wanted the brand new shoes when I could only afford the second-hand pair. She wanted vacations when I could barely manage the gas money for a trip to the beach. I told myself it was just the impatience of youth that one day she would understand. But understanding never seemed to come. There were small comments at first, a sigh when I pulled out leftovers, a roll of the eyes when I wore the same church dress for the 3rd Sunday in a row. Once she whispered to a friend on the phone, "My mom is so old-fashioned she doesn't get it." I told myself not to take it personally. Children push away the ones closest to them, I reminded myself. Still, each word left a mark. The shift became sharper as Vanessa entered adulthood. She married a man who cared more about appearances than kindness, and slowly she began to mirror him. At gatherings, she would compare our modest home to her friends' new houses in gated communities. She would laugh about my simple cooking, saying, "Mom, you really need to learn how to use those new air fryers. Nobody cooks with so much oil anymore." It wasn't the words themselves, but the tone, the way they turned me into a relic of the past, something to be tolerated, not honored. The day of my birthday was not the first time she mocked me in front of others. It was simply the loudest, the most undeniable. And what made it worse was the silence of the others, the cousins who smiled awkwardly, the siblings who looked away, even Daniel, who tapped his glass to avoid my eyes. Their silence was its own kind of betrayal, telling me I was alone in that moment. I often wonder if perhaps I spoiled Vanessa without meaning to. She was the youngest, the one I felt guilty for not giving enough time after her father died. I let her have the bigger slice of cake the later bedtime, the excuses when her grades slipped. Maybe in trying to fill the hole her father left, I gave her the wrong lesson that love meant never holding her accountable. If that is true, then her cruelty at the dinner table was as much my failure as hers. But even if I had made mistakes, I did not deserve public humiliation from my own flesh and blood. As I sat in my bedroom that night after everyone had gone home and the will had been signed, I opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were the mementos of a life lived in service to others. Baby shoes worn soft at the toes, report cards with gold stars, photographs of birthdays where I was the one baking the cake. I touched each one and asked myself, where did the love go? The truth is, love doesn't vanish. It gets buried under pride, under resentment, under the noise of a world that tells our children to chase more, to want bigger, to forget the quiet sacrifices that raised them. That night, I realized something. If my children could not honor me while I was alive, then I would honor myself. I would not spend whatever years God still gave me waiting for apologies that might never come. The will I had signed was not revenge. It was a declaration that my life, my love had value, and that value deserved to be remembered not in laughter at my expense, but in the education of children who knew how to say thank you. Still as firm as I tried to be, one thought gnawed at me in the quiet hours. Was there still a chance to reach her? Or had I already closed the door for good? If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me. In the weeks after my birthday, the house grew quieter than ever. The laughter that once drifted through my windows had faded, replaced by the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. I thought I would feel peace after signing the will, but instead, there was an ache, a hollow echo reminding me that silence is sometimes more painful than words. Vanessa stopped calling. At first I told myself she was busy with work, busy with her husband, busy with the pace of life. But deep down I knew she was angry. She had always been quick to anger, quicker still to sulk. And when Vanessa was angry, she punished me with absence. One Sunday afternoon, while sitting alone at church, I overheard 2 women whispering in the pew behind me. Such a shame after everything she did for those kids. And to talk about her mother like that, I heard Vanessa at the grocery store saying she was embarrassed to be seen with her own mom. The words felt like stones tossed at my back. I kept my eyes fixed on the stained glass window of the shepherd carrying the lamb, trying not to let the tears spill. Embarrassed. That was the word she had chosen. As if my gray hair and wrinkled hands were a burden she had to hide. Later that week, Daniel came by, shifting uncomfortably as he stood in my doorway. "Mom, maybe you went too far with the will," he said, scratching the back of his neck. She's hurt. She didn't mean anything by it. I wanted to laugh at the irony. She had humiliated me publicly, and yet somehow she was the one who was hurt." "Daniel, I asked softly if your father were alive. Would he have stood by and let her speak to me that way?" Daniel didn't answer. His silence was all the answer I needed. One evening, while I was sorting through old bills at the kitchen table, I came across a letter tucked between envelopes. It was addressed to Vanessa, mistakenly delivered to my address. My curiosity got the better of me, and though part of me felt guilty, I unfolded the paper. It was from a bank. A past due notice. Vanessa and her husband had taken out a sizable loan, and they were months behind on payments. The pieces began to fall into place. Her cruelty wasn't just about embarrassment. It was about money, about the assumption that as her mother, I would one day bail her out, whether through gifts, inheritance, or by quietly covering her debts. And now with the will signed, that safety net had vanished. I leaned back in my chair, the letter trembling in my hand. The humiliation at the dinner table was painful. Yes, but this betrayal of assuming my sacrifices were bottomless cut even deeper. Memories surfaced of times she had come by asking for a little help with the bills, times she'd dropped hints about vacations she couldn't quite afford. I had given what I could, believing I was helping her build a better life. But the truth was clearer now. My help had not built gratitude. It had built expectation. One night I heard voices outside my window. Vanessa had come over unaware I was still awake. Through the crack in the curtain, I saw her standing on the porch with her husband arguing. "She should have left the house to us," he hissed. "After all we've done for her." "All we've done," Vanessa shot back, her voice sharp. "I'm the one who has to visit, listen to her stories, deal with her old-fashioned ways. Daniel never does anything. It should have been mine." I stepped back from the curtain, my breath caught in my chest. To hear your child speak of you, as though you were a burden to be endured, a chore to be checked off, it is a kind of death before death itself. That night, I prayed harder than I had in years. I asked God to show me whether my heart had grown too hard, whether there was still room for forgiveness. But even in prayer, I felt the sting of betrayal. The following morning, I decided to pay a visit to my lawyer, Mr. Reynolds. I wanted to be sure the will was airtight, that no loophole would allow my children to twist my intentions. He reviewed the documents carefully, nodding. "You've done the right thing, Helen," he said gently. "Sometimes tough love is the only kind that leaves a lasting lesson." I nodded, but inside I wondered, was this truly love, or was it the final nail in the coffin of a family I had spent my life building? When I returned home, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No name, just a single sheet of paper inside. On it was written, "She talks about you worse than you know. Protect yourself." The handwriting was unfamiliar. My hands trembled as I read it again and again. Whoever had left it wanted me to understand that what I'd overheard was just the surface. There were layers of disrespect I had yet to uncover. The betrayal was no longer just a passing comment at a birthday dinner. It was a pattern, a habit, a view of me not as a mother to be cherished, but as a resource to be used and ridiculed. And so the spark of humiliation grew into a flame that would lead me not only to protect what little I had, but also to confront the truth I had been avoiding. Sometimes family isn't defined by blood, but by love, and sometimes the people you give the most to are the ones who take you for granted the deepest. If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me. The morning after finding that anonymous note under my door, I couldn't shake the feeling that my world was shifting. It wasn't just the humiliation at my birthday or the overdue bill I had discovered. It was something larger, heavier, as if the universe itself were demanding that I stop ignoring the truth. For days I carried that slip of paper in my pocket, running my fingers across its creased edges whenever doubt tried to soften my resolve. Whoever had written it, whether a friend, a neighbor, or maybe even a family member, had forced me to face what I had been avoiding, my daughter's disrespect, was not an accident, not a joke, but a reflection of how she truly saw me. Still, a part of me longed for reconciliation. I wanted to believe that if I sat across from Vanessa face to face, mother to daughter, I could reach the girl who used to curl up beside me during thunderstorms, who once whispered, "Mom, don't ever leave me." I needed to know if she was still there, buried under the sharp words and cold glances, so I invited her over. The kitchen smelled of chicken soup, the kind I used to make when she had a fever as a little girl. I thought maybe the scent of it would soften her heart, remind her of the mother who had sat by her bed through nights of coughing and fear. When Vanessa arrived, she didn't even comment on the smell. She breezed into the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, barely glancing at me. "Sit," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She slid into the chair, sighing dramatically. "Mom, I don't have much time." "What's this about?" I folded my hands, searching her face for a flicker of warmth. "Vanessa, I need to talk to you about what happened at my birthday, about the things I've heard since." She rolled her eyes. "Mom, are we still on this?" "It was a joke. People need to lighten up." "Is that what you call it, a joke?" My voice wavered. "I heard you at the grocery store, Vanessa. I heard you on the porch with your husband, and someone left me a note warning me about how you speak of me when I'm not around." Her phone stilled in her hand. "What note?" "It doesn't matter who wrote it. What matters is whether it's true." For a moment her mask slipped. Her mouth opened, then closed, as if she were weighing honesty against pride. Finally she scoffed. "So what if I vented a little?" "You don't make it easy, Mom. You're stuck in the past. You never try to fit in, you never move forward. Do you know how embarrassing it is when my friends ask why my mother still lives like it's the 1970s? The words hit me like cold water. I leaned back, clutching the edge of the table. "Embarrassing," I whispered. "That's what I am to you." She didn't answer. Silence is its own confession. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the bank letter I had found. I slid it across the table. Her eyes widened as she recognized it. "You opened my mail," she snapped. "You left it here," I said calmly. "And it tells me everything I needed to know. The debts, the reasons behind your anger. You weren't embarrassed by me, Vanessa. You were counting on me. Counting on my money, my house, my sacrifices, even after all these years. And when you realized I wouldn't give you everything, you turned me into the villain?" Her cheeks flushed red. "That's not true. Then tell me what is true," I challenged. Because from where I sit, it seems that the daughter I raised has forgotten the very hands that fed her, clothed her, and prayed for her. For a brief moment, her eyes filled with tears. I thought I saw the little girl again, the one who had clung to me in church pews and whispered secrets into my ear. But then just as quickly, the mask snapped back into place. "You don't understand," she said bitterly. "You never have. You always made me feel like I had to be grateful for scraps. Daniel got to go to college. Mary got piano lessons. And me, I got hand-me-downs and excuses. Maybe I deserve more, Mom. Maybe I deserve to finally have something of my own. I felt the air leave my lungs. Was that it? Was this all about who got what? About fairness, measured in dollars and opportunities? Did she truly believe that, because I had scraped by doing my best to balance 3 children's needs, she had been wronged? "Vanessa," I said softly, "I may not have given you everything you wanted, but I gave you everything I had. And if you can't see that, then maybe my signature on that will was the truest thing I've ever done." Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood, fists clenched. "You'll regret this, Mom. When you're old and alone, you'll wish you had me." I sat very still, my spoon cooling in the soup. "Better alone with dignity," I whispered, "than surrounded by those who mock me." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That evening, Daniel came by again. He must have heard from Vanessa because his face was tight, his words careful. "Mom, maybe we should talk about this calmly," he said. "Selling the house, setting up some sort of trust, there are ways to compromise. Vanessa just feels left out." I stared at my eldest son, the boy who once brought me dandelions from the yard, as if they were roses. Compromise. "Daniel, did you hear what she said to me? Have you heard what she says about me behind my back? If this is what being her mother means, then maybe compromise is nothing but surrender." He had no answer. He shifted uncomfortable, then finally muttered, "I just don't want this family to fall apart." The family, I said, my voice low but firm, fell apart the moment respect was replaced with entitlement. Daniel left soon after, his shoulders heavy, torn between loyalty to his sister and guilt toward his mother. The days that followed were tense. Rumors swirled among relatives. Some whispered that I had gone too far, that I was being dramatic. Others quietly told me I had done the right thing. But in every conversation, I saw the same question in their eyes: how far was I willing to go? The answer came sooner than I expected. 1 week later, I received an invitation to a family dinner hosted by Vanessa. Against my better judgment, I went. Perhaps I still hoped for reconciliation, or perhaps I wanted to look her in the eye once more. Her home was larger than mine, furnished with shiny appliances and decorative vases, but it felt cold, as though every piece had been chosen for show, not for comfort. When I stepped inside, conversation hushed. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, sensing the storm that hovered just out of sight. The meal began quietly. Vanessa's smile was tight, her laughter forced. I could tell she was playing hostess, trying to convince the family that all was well. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Halfway through the meal, she finally snapped. "You know, Mom," she said loudly, clinking her glass for attention, "I think it's unfair how you've treated me. Everyone here knows I've been the one who stayed, the one who looked after you. And yet somehow, I'm the villain." Meanwhile, Daniel and Mary do the bare minimum and get rewarded. The room froze. Forks hovered midair. Eyes darted from her face to mine. I set down my fork slowly, looked after me. I repeated my voice, calm but firm. "Vanessa, when was the last time you came here without asking for money, without mocking me, without turning me into a burden in your conversations? Looking after me isn't about being in the same zip code. It's about love, respect, and kindness. Tell me, have you shown me any of those?" Her face crumpled. "I gave you my time. Doesn't that count?" "Not when that time is filled with resentment," I said. "Not when every word cuts me down." Silence settled over the table. A cousin cleared his throat, as if trying to ease the tension, but no one dared to speak. I reached into my bag and pulled out the note again. I laid it on the table for everyone to see. "Someone in this very family cared enough to warn me," I said, my gaze sweeping the room. "They told me Vanessa's words were sharper than any knife, and now you all have heard it yourselves." The weight of the moment pressed on every soul in that room. Vanessa's husband shifted uncomfortably, his eyes avoiding mine. Daniel stared at the table, shame flooding his features. "I will not be humiliated again," I said quietly. "Not by strangers, not by friends, and certainly not by my own children. If that means you call me cold, then so be it. But I will not apologize for demanding respect." With that, I stood. The chair scraped back, the sound echoing in the silence. "Dinner is over," I said, though I was not the host. And in that moment, I realized power is not about who sets the table. It is about who refuses to be broken at it. That night, as I drove home beneath the Spanish moss that draped the streets of Savannah, I felt both heavy and light. Heavy with grief, light with resolve. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be whispers, accusations, and more attempts to sway me. But I had crossed a line one I could never uncross. For the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom. If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me. In the quiet weeks that followed that fateful dinner, I spent more time on the porch than anywhere else. The rocking chair creaked under me as I watched the Spanish moss sway gently in the breeze, the Savannah sun slipping low on the horizon. For the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe. It wasn't that the pain had disappeared, it still throbbed a dull ache when I thought of Vanessa's words. But with every sunrise, I began to understand something deeper. Bitterness was a chain, and I had the key. One Sunday morning after church, I sat at my kitchen table with my Bible open. My eyes landed on the verse I had known since childhood, "Honor your father and mother." I whispered it aloud, my voice trembling. The words weren't just a command for children, they were a reminder for parents too. A reminder that no matter how deep the wound of family betrayal, love and forgiveness were still choices I could make. Forgiveness, I realized, was not the same as forgetting. It didn't mean excusing cruelty or pretending it had never happened. It meant refusing to let that cruelty define me. It meant choosing peace over poison. So one evening, I wrote Vanessa a letter. Not a legal document, not a scolding, but a simple letter from a mother to her daughter. My dear Vanessa, I want you to know that I have loved you from the moment I first held you in my arms. Nothing you have said or done can erase that truth. Yes, your words hurt me deeply. Yes, I had to protect myself by signing that will. But I also want you to know that my door is not locked. If you are ready to speak with respect, if you are ready to remember the love that built this home, you will always find me here. Love, Mom. I didn't know if she would ever answer, but writing it lifted a weight from my chest. It was my way of saying I will not let anger have the last word. In time, Daniel came by more often. He fixed the screen door, helped me carry groceries, sat with me on the porch. One afternoon, he said quietly, "Mom, I think she read your letter. She hasn't said much, but..." She cried when she saw it. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Sometimes seeds take years to sprout. All I could do was plant mine and wait. Meanwhile, I turned my energy to something that brought me joy, setting up the scholarship fund in my husband's name. With Mr. Reynolds' help, we finalized the papers, and soon the first applications began to arrive. Young students, many from families who had never dreamed of college, wrote about their hopes and their struggles. Reading their words filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. These were the children who would carry my husband's name forward, not through inheritance or entitlement, but through education, through gratitude. And in a way, they carried mine too. One afternoon, as I watched a young girl receive the very first scholarship award, her eyes shining with hope, I thought to myself, this is what legacy truly means. Not a house, not a bank account, but the chance to change someone's life for the better. And in that moment, I remembered a quote I had once scribbled in the margin of a book, "It is never too late to be what you might have been." George Eliot's words echoed through me like a promise. It was never too late for me to stop being just a victim of family betrayal. It was never too late to be a woman who chose dignity, compassion, and forgiveness. I still don't know what the future holds for me and Vanessa. Maybe she will come back to my porch one day, tears in her eyes, ready to start over. Maybe she won't. But either way, I know this my story doesn't end with bitterness. It ends with freedom. Dear friends, as you listen to my story, I want to ask you, have you ever spoken a careless word that wounded your parents? Have you ever felt the sting of disrespect from someone you raised with your own two hands? Do you believe that forgiveness can be stronger than betrayal? I challenge you before the day is over to pick up the phone. Call your mother, call your father. Tell them 3 simple things. I thank you. I'm proud of you. I love you. Because one day you may find the chair at the head of the table empty and no words left to say. As for me, I will keep rocking on this porch, watching the light shift through the trees, praying for my children, and trusting that love, real love, always finds its way home. My story is not just about pain. It is about dignity, about choosing peace over poison, about knowing that even in the face of family betrayal, a heart can choose to forgive. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from, and when was the last time you told your parents you loved them? And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories of resilience, family, and the quiet strength of ordinary people, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Because in the end, we are all writing our own stories. And like George Eliot said, it is never too late to be what you might have been.